So after eating a little too much junk food tonight and giving myself an upset stomach, I'm reminded of a time where I also had an upset stomach. The time I took part in a food eating competition. Now, there's an important piece of background information here, and it is that I am a very picky eater. I'm a picky eater to the point where once people learn how I eat, they often wonder how I haven't died yet. It was basically a miracle when I finally added pasta sauce to my noodles and butter. When growing up, my dad used to call me white bread, venting his frustration out to relatives, but then turning around and lovingly making peanut butter and no jelly sandwiches with white bread and the crust removed. You know, that sort of thing. To set the scene, the church my family had belonged to had hired this, and the details are fuzzy, but I think it might have been a Christian cover band, you know, covering all those major Christian hits. The particularities are the vital part of this story, but the important part is that this band was coming to perform for one big Sunday school Godapalooza. Now, my dad had taught Sunday school for a number of years, so he had some insider info about the eating competition that was going to happen. Even though he knew I was a picky eater, he also knew that I had a competitive streak. A competitive streak that would overrule the picky eating if there were glory to be won. And there was. If there was a t-shirt or something at stake, okay, I don't particularly remember, but the point is that the organizers' event were planning this little food eating competition for a laugh at the end of the band's performance. And the way the organizers presented it was that the leader of the band was from Greenland, and in Greenland they have this acquired taste delicacy of ishkapopska, or fish pops. Now, I have not been able to confirm this anywhere online, so they may have just been pulling this out of their ass, and now I'm going online and putting out this false stuff about Greenland, but that's okay. That's okay. The bottom line is that this eating competition was going to be eating fish pops. Again, I have not been able to find any recipes or really confirm the actual global existence of these fish pops, but needless to say, that's what was on the menu. And the way the organizers made these things is, if you can imagine the kind of after school with your mom making popsicles, where you take water and like some sort of flavoring and you put your craft popsicle sticks in it and then put it in the freezer, and then afterwards is this unwieldy frozen, kind of doesn't taste exactly like water, maybe maybe it has some sugar in there popsicle. They did that, and then instead of dye or flavoring, they added clams, salmon, oysters, calamari, and some other, like, basically they control F'd seafood and just threw it in this batch, this witch's brew, and then shoved it in a freezer somewhere and made like 20 of them, like way too many. Now, when I say my dad had readied me for this by giving me insider information, he had told me that there was going to be an eating competition and to put myself in the front of the crowd after the show. But he hadn't said the particularities of what we were going to be eating. And so I was standing there, very tense, anxious, eager to win by cramming stuff into my face. And I'm listening to this backstory of them creating these fish monstrosities that have been encased in ice, like Godzilla. And the adrenaline and my desire to win is overriding my picky eating, just as my dad had predicted. So, when they finished their announcement and asked for participants, my hand just rocketed up. If it hadn't been attached to the rest of my body, it would have pierced the ceiling and gone from the basement into the church above, desecrating the pews. But, as it were, my tiny boy sinews kept everything together, but got me into the contest. I was probably the youngest one up there. It's a little foggy now, me recalling it, and also the blur of the adrenaline at the time. But I do remember one other guy who volunteered, and as they were passing out the fish pops, this guy, I believe the modern nomenclature would be popped off, and took off his shirt in order to consume the fish pop, which is quite intimidating. It's an effective approach to psychological warfare, and I had my trepidations. My inner voice was still saying, wait, no, you're going to hate this. Don't do this to yourself. No, don't do this to me. This is your stomach speaking to you. Please don't shove this into me. But then, once that guy took his shirt off, I said to myself, now I'm definitely gonna win. I'm gonna kick his ass. Doesn't matter to anybody else. Just you and me. I think we might have even locked eyes, very final confrontation. Fish pops. I could feel all that anxiety and tension being channeled and funneled. My mind and my body together were just becoming a mouth. Those inner voices of doubt were beginning to fade. You're going to hate it. You're not going to be able to eat it fast enough. Until it was just me, this fish pop, and my orifice, and my clenched fist. And so there's a bit of a murmur in the crowd, because a young gentleman had just taken his shirt off at a church event. And I'm just standing there, sweating, clutching a fish pop, and they say, go! And so I go. It was gross, but that was not something I realized right away. That was something that began to kick in as there began to be a backlog in my mouth. Because I'm not a professional eater by any stretch of the imagination, so this was my first foray into eating very quickly. And so I had this traffic jam of fish chunks in my mouth, but I still had to win. And so I kept going. I kept choking back the fish and the ice. What brought me out of my tunnel vision, which was actually doing me some favors as I was taking some pretty big bites, was one, the cheer of the crowd. And I had thought that was just the cheer of everything starting. But the cheer of the crowd included my name in it. Oh, yes, thank you, yes, thank you for coming out and witnessing my demolishing of this sea past, post life. And that was a bit of a confidence boost, which was quickly followed by a piece that had, gotten trapped on the turnpike, falling out of my mouth. It's a little chip of ice and maybe, I don't know, eel. I don't know what they crammed in there. This little piece dribbled out of my mouth right onto the concrete floor of the basement. And again, I'm not a person anymore. I am a mouth. So it takes a second. It takes a click of recognition. But unfortunately, that click was also spent by what used to be my body, bending over and picking it up and cramming it back onto the highway that is my mouth. And the cheer at that point turned into a oh. Now, it was at that moment where I also had a chance with my finger down my mouth orifice to glance at how my 7 or 8 competitors were doing. No one else was eating them. Nobody else. I glanced right, and I saw full fish pops, and looked up and saw just eyes of complete terror, awe, perhaps, of the people who got up for a laugh, and when faced with eating a fish pop, made the rational decision of not. And I glanced to my left, and another couple faces of awe and perhaps the glimmer of admiration. And one shirtless male, putting his shirt back on. What? I did not realize this was a clothes removing and then redonning competition. Why am I eating this fish pop? But that steeled my resolve. It was just me. I was in a room full of, 100? We'll pump it up to 200. Devout Christians watching a preteen scarf down today's catch. So I basked in that spotlight. I let it beam off of my newly fisherman face. I had earned my sea legs without even going on a boat. Now, it got to the point where I was able to fit the rest of the fish pop into my mouth, and so I was left with just the popsicle. But they was still backed up on the freeway. People hadn't made it home yet. Made it back out to the ocean. And the girl with this huge tub of fish pops presented it to me. And I got a cheer out of the crowd. Ooh, a little flourish. Ooh. Is he gonna do another one? No. I just stood there, chipmunk cheeks full of sass. Kind of shook my head, waved my hand. It was a bit of a battle getting the rest of that into my system. And one that it's a tough pill to swallow when I could have won by taking a bite. But I did it. Now, as you can imagine, that now this has traveled down into my stomach, the entire path now felt spicy. It just felt burny. And I had never eaten spicy food before, but I thought that was, Indian or Mexican, not fish. I don't know. So I thought maybe I was having some sort of internal allergic reaction to a bunch of fish. Maybe it was just gonna die in this act of triumph of consuming a bunch of fish out of novelty and competition. So as the dust settled, with a grand total of 1 fish pop eaten by the champion, Congratulations were echoing throughout the room. Confetti was thrown. Not really. People were rioting. He ate the fish pop! It was a joke and he did it! He's gonna Google it afterwards, it's not gonna exist! And the tunnel vision returned. But it was because I thought I was dying. And I really, really wanted some water. That was all that I wanted in my life ever. It was just like water to wash away what I had just done to myself. To return the fish to their watery home. Someone did shove a t-shirt my way. I don't have it anymore. But I swear to you that I did win it. And my dad found me a bottle of water, which I then chugged. So I'm standing there, not even registering the raucous joy around me, mere hours away from very much regretting the decision to compete. And I'm clutching my prize t-shirt in one hand and a nearly empty bottle of water in one, and the bottle cap in my right hand. And the guy who took off his shirt came and found me. Now, I don't remember exactly what it is that he said because, again, my ears were no longer capable of perceiving human speech because they had just been funneling their energy towards the mouth. But it was something like, "Congratulations. I didn't think you had it in you. You done good, kid." It was somewhat dampened that because I had the bottle cap in my right hand, I gave him the worst handshake in the history of handshakes, where I pretty much only touched his hand with the outer ring of my hand, like a claw. In any case, it kind of made the victory complete. That I had defeated my arch nemesis, and defeated and rose above the pickiness in myself. Not that that was going to change my eating habits, in fact it was going to reinforce them. But the point being, I showed that small congregation just what humanity is capable of when a t-shirt and glory are on the line. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go find some Pepto-Bismol.